But the 1970s, growing up in Davenport, is a lot different than now for several reasons. One, because it was the 1970s. So, for example, I think I was probably in 5th or 6th grade. I pretty much, my friends and I, we roamed around Davenport on our bicycles. There came a point where I refused to ask my parents for a ride to be dropped off somewhere because I would be too embarrassed that I couldn't get myself there myself. So we would just roam the streets on our bicycles. And the other good thing is if you ride your bike and you don't have your parents drop you off, then they don't necessarily know where you are because you're independent, you're autonomous. But in the 1970s, parents were okay with this. This was fairly normal. Just recently I saw on NPR I think it was on PBS, some non-profit organization had to be formed to coach parents to let their child just go off in the neighborhood for 10 minutes on their own. And this was remarkable. But our parents, like in the summertime, I'd be gone for 6, 8, 10 hours of a day, and they'd have no idea where I was. And when of course, had no cell phones. And when you'd come home, they'd say, what did you do today? But, even if you're in like 7th or 8th grade, I don't know if that's the same. Is it the same for you, the 8th graders now? Your parents, you just wander off and, there just wasn't the same degree of concern. Plus, I was the 5th out of 6 kids, and so if your parents have already been through 4, they're kind of like, yeah, he's not going to die. So I was a pretty autonomous kid. I went to high school. I was not interested in studies at all. I was not a good student. I never took a book home from high school. Never took an AP class. There were no AP classes offered at my high school. I did poorly on the ACT. I only took it once. Just a lousy score, and I got into Iowa State, and UNI, and I figured that was a big enough selection. It didn't cost that much to get into to go to those schools. It wasn't that hard to get into them. There just wasn't this concern with being a good student, and I think is the climate of the student body sets that expectation. Well, that expectation wasn't there in my high school. I was very, very concerned about 2 things: football and track, and I worked really, really hard to get better at those. But that's where my interests lied. I pretty much hung around with jocks and stoners in high school, and they were the same people, right? So this event that you're asking about, when I ran from the police, I was a senior, and it was football season. It was the last week of football. Our team wasn't really that good. We were 4-4 going into the last game, and my friends and I, it was Halloween, or the night before Halloween. It was trick-or-treat night. And so my friends and I, after football practice, were like, you ain't going to study tonight, what should we do? And so we thought it'd be fun to decorate the courtyard of our high school. So the courtyard was about half the size of this one, but you couldn't get into the courtyard except through the building. The only way in was to go in the building and out the library doors and into the courtyard. So we thought it'd be funny if we decorated it as like an early senior prank. So we all went home for supper. We came back and met, and it was dark. And we had a few pickup trucks and a few cars. There were about 18 of us. And we just started roaming the neighborhoods, picking up stuff to decorate the the courtyard with. So we went in the alley behind taverns and got some empty keg barrels. We stole real estate signs out of yards. We took we took Halloween decorations off people's porches and pumpkins and all. We didn't molest any small children. Didn't take their candy. We just took decorations. And so we went back to the high school and we had to get a ladder. This buddy of mine, Paul Wyman, didn't live very far, so he went and got a ladder. So it's a one-story building. And so we just put a ladder up to the roof, scampered across the roof, dropped the ladder back down into the courtyard, and we were there. So there's about 18 of us. We put the ladder, we're chucking keg barrels up and real estate signs and everything. And then we go across, drop in, and we decorate the courtyard in a way that we thought looked, just right, just perfect. So then we went back up to the roof. We're going to go back to our cars and leave. And, being a 17-year-old with your friends, we were unaware that we must have made a lot of noise. Because the convent, that's where the nuns live. It was a Catholic high school. The nuns must have heard us going up and in, and they must have, 911 and called the cops on us. Because when we went to go down, it was dark. It was really dark. And the first 3 or 4 guys down, I was still up on the roof, watching, but I heard, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be. And that's about all I heard because, like the rest of us, we ran. So we went straight across the roof of the high school to the exact opposite end of the high school, where, it would take the cops a long time to run back to their cars and drive all the way around the high school. And so we ran all the way to the other end of the high school. We jumped off the roof, kind of rolled in the bushes, and then scampered down through St. John Vianney Rectory and all the way down to Junkie Park. Those fat donut-eating cops were no way they were going to catch us. But they did have 4 of us. There were 4 guys who had gotten caught. And, although I was concerned about them, you would agree that I made the right decision, right? I mean, sometimes you just have to run from the police. Now, I personally find it strange that of all my APUSH students, none of them have ever run from the police. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? You need to live a little. Be a kid, Get into some mischief. That's how I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little. So we had this really dumb football coach. We had a really good football coach when I was freshman, sophomore, and junior. But that coach left and we got a new coach and he was just an idiot. I'm sorry, that was about the nicest thing I could say about him. And so he didn't ask, the next day, he didn't ask any questions. The 4 guys who got arrested, 2 of them were 17. And so big difference if you get arrested when you're 17 or 18. So the 2 who were arrested when you're 17, they just call your parents. And your parents come and pick you up. But if you're 18, there's more of a formal legal process and they can print your name in the paper. So the next day, the football coach called a meeting and said, anybody who was arrested last night for that prank does not get to play in the game on Friday. It was our last game of the season. And that's kind of sinking in. So I raised my hand in the meeting and said, well, what if you were there but you didn't get caught? And he evidently didn't bother to find out whether more guys were there. So he said, anybody who was there doesn't get to play in the last game. And then he goes, who was there? And 16 of us raised our hand, which was essentially the seniors on the varsity football team. So we did not get to play our last game, which I thought that's only fair. I mean, we were there, we participated. I'm not going to go play the game when they don't get to play, even though we did the same thing. That doesn't seem right. Somebody had to be the first one down the ladder, right? So that was known as the great Halloween caper in our high school.